Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to make what is probably going to be my favorite grilled sandwich. And this was a sandwich that almost was never a part of my life. The classic Reuben. I know there are many videos out there and many different ways to make the Reuben, but this is a way that I have always made it. So there is no real wrong way to make it, it's just however you want it. So the reason I say this sandwich was almost never a part of my life is because when I was 9 years old in 1969, I had a very bad sauerkraut experience. My dad really enjoyed sauerkraut and hot dogs, and I can remember growing up we would have sauerkraut and hot dogs for dinner. Once or twice a month my mom would make them, and I too enjoyed it. I thought that was pretty good stuff, but in 1969, when I was 9 years old, I just overate the sauerkraut and hot dog dinner one night and found myself very ill. 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, waking up and getting very sick. And it just scared the tar out of me because I was very sick, and the horrible taste and smell and everything, it affected me for many years. I never could stand the sight or the smell of sauerkraut. It is very strong and powerful stuff. So I would avoid that for more than 20 years. And it was finally sometime in the 1980s, the late 1980s I believe, I had went out to lunch with a girlfriend, and she had ordered a Reuben sandwich, and this was really before I started working in the food service industry. I didn't even know what a Reuben was. A typical Reuben comes with rye bread, pastrami or corned beef, sauerkraut, and usually Swiss cheese and Thousand Island dressing. And I've always been a cheeseburger and French fry type guy. And when this sandwich arrived at the table, I asked her about it because it smelled so good. I didn't even know it had sauerkraut on it. And at some point I tried a bite of her sandwich and thought it was delicious. And that's when I realized there was sauerkraut in it. Oh my goodness, I'm afraid of sauerkraut. I don't want sauerkraut. Sauerkraut makes me sick. Well, everything changed for me then. I started realizing that the mixture of all those ingredients with the sauerkraut just made it very delicious. And a Reuben is very delicious. Like I said, it's really one of my very favorite sandwiches. Grilled sandwiches, that is. So I've got rye bread here. I've got pastrami, sliced pastrami. Corned beef is okay too, but I kind of prefer the pastrami. And I like Swiss cheese, but I like provolone cheese a little bit better. So that's what I'm going to be putting on my Reuben sandwich that I'm going to make today. We got sauerkraut here. Typically sauerkraut comes in a jar like this and it's just filled with liquid. Well, you can't use it, or at least I can't use it like that. So I've taken and drained a bunch of my sauerkraut. It's laying on top of paper towels, so it's as dry as it can possibly be without getting too dry and brittle. And I'll tell you, this stuff smells pretty powerful, and it kind of brings back those bad memories from 1969. We've also got Thousand Island dressing. I'm sure there's other kind of dressings we can use. I've got the mayonnaise here because that's, again, what I'm going to use to toast my bread in Grandma's old cast iron skillet. So let's go ahead and get started and make this sandwich. I'm going to be using 2 cast iron skillets. This one is Grandma's cast iron skillet from my grandmother on my mother's side, and this is a much smaller cast iron skillet from my grandmother on my dad's side. So both of these pans are older than me, but they're beautiful, they're in good shape, and I was able to find these lids to go on them. And back here we've got our au jus. I used this stuff to heat up the roast beef for my the video before this. I made a San Francisco sandwich, which is also very delicious. So I've had this for about a week. I've been reusing it, dipping the roast beef in it, and now I'm dipping pastrami in it. And that's adding a whole bunch of flavor to this au jus. It will last a long time. And I'm eventually going to, once I'm done with sandwiches, I'm going to make a beef gravy out of that. So that'll be a whole nother video. So while all that stuff is warming up, I'll start preparing to make this delicious sandwich for my dinner tonight. Okay, we can just about start making our sandwich. We've got our au jus up to boil. That's all we need to do. So we can now just turn that off and put the cover back on. And we can take the lids off of both of these. So both our cast irons are just about at temperature. I'm going to put a little bit of avocado oil in the small cast iron, about that much, because that's where we're going to put our sauerkraut. And you can see it's plenty hot. It's smoking a little bit, so let's just take it off there for a moment. And now we're going to take a bunch of this lovely drained sauerkraut. Smelly stuff, but it's good when you put it on the sandwich. I like a lot of it on there, so I'm going to go with probably about that much. Let's get it back on the burner, and we'll want to put our cover back on that because it's going to start popping everywhere. I want to cook that pretty good, and it's just the way I like it personally. Some people may not like it like that. It's up to you. So we'll need to give that a stir occasionally so it doesn't really start to burn. It can, and you want to be sure to dump a bunch of it all over the side of your stove. And put that back in there. We don't want to waste any of that. It's good stuff. Yeah, we'll stir it a couple of times, but this can cook for quite a while. It's not going to burn right away. So I have prepared my rye bread for grilling with the mayonnaise. So we'll drop that in Grandma's old skillet. I love cast iron. Cast iron is great to cook in. It's just wonderful. Then to go over here and do a little bit more stirring, being a little bit more careful so we don't just get it all over the stove. There, you can see it's actually starting to brown just a little bit. So I like it a little bit on the cooked side. And I'm not adding any of the dressing to it yet. You can actually kind of rotate your bread around in there like that. Not quite ready to put the provolone on yet, but I am ready to put my pastrami into the au jus right now. And here's our pastrami. We got 4 slices there. It's very thin, so we're just going to drop it in there and let it sit. Time to stir up the sauerkraut again. It's not really browning anymore. Getting a little brown, but that's the way I personally like it, and it is not sticking horribly to my cast iron. If I hadn't drained all that water out of there, I would have a horrible stuck mess right now. And checking my bread, and it is very toasted, so we're going to take that off the hot burner for now and throw our provolone on there. That will not take very long. So not to overcook my bread too much, I'm going to go ahead and take it out of here right now and put it on the plate. The cheese isn't quite melted on there, but that's not a problem. So I've turned all my burners off now, so everything is good. This is ready to come out of here anytime. Look at that. Look at how my cast iron is just non-stick. It's very important to treat your cast iron good so it'll stay like that. So now it's time to fish around in the au jus for my pastrami. There we go. We want to let it drain. There, a fair piece. Shouldn't be in there too long. And of course the pastrami is just too long for the bread, and that's perfectly fine. There we go. That'll work for me. No more in there. Oh, there is a piece in there. I thought that looked a little light. There we go. Oh yeah. That's it on the pastrami. So we're done with the stove now. The big cast iron is moved to a cool spot. All the burners are off, so we're good to go. And I've moved my au jus onto the counter. It's sitting on a pot holder because I want that to cool off a fair amount before I put it in the refrigerator for cooling and safekeeping. And now it's time for the hot sauerkraut. We can just pour that right out of the cast iron. Look at that. I put a lot on there. And my cast iron is completely non-stick. And now the final touches for this sandwich is the Thousand Island dressing. I really don't know of any other dressing you'd want to put on this. Thousand Island is really the only thing I think of, but I'm sure there's other dressings. I don't want to go too heavy, but at the same time, I want a fair amount of dressing on there. And that looks like a fair amount of dressing. I know some people actually make the mistake, in my opinion, of mixing their sauerkraut and dressing ahead of time and then frying it or warming it up. I think that's a big mistake. Certainly for me it is. But if it works for you, then I would go for it for sure. Now this is going to be one big thick sandwich that really needs to be eaten with a fork. For me, this is an entire meal. The classic Reuben sandwich. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.